So today I thought I'd discuss a little bit about what's going on with the Ohio train wreck, which has been, well, so far I think it's been a disaster for anyone who lives in Ohio or in a state surrounding Ohio or downstream of Ohio. So let's get into it, shall we? So first story is from the Hill. Trump to visit East Palestine in wake of train derailment. Why is he going to visit there? Well, in a nutshell, he's going to visit there because Biden's not really doing anything, and because Trump is running for president. And supposedly Joe Biden's going to run for re-election in 24. We'll see if that still happens. Some people doubt that. I kind of doubt that. But besides that, I think Newsweek kind of gets the idea. Joe Biden may have handed Donald Trump a huge win with the Ohio response. So let's get into a little bit of what this article talks about. President Joe Biden may have handed former President Donald Trump a major win as his administration faces criticism over its handling of the train derailment in Ohio. Trump will visit the town of East Palestine, Ohio, where the derailment occurred next week, with the former president touting the trip on his Truth Social platform on Saturday morning. The Biden administration has faced anger from local residents and criticism from many elected Republicans over its response to the incident, while neither Biden nor Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg have yet visited. Ugh. However, EPA Administrator Michael Reagan visited the site on Thursday. Well, that's good, but we'd like to see some higher level cabinet officials or maybe the president himself visiting what is probably the greatest environmental disaster of the year. And the year's just started. Maybe you could get something new that happens that's worse. But the derailment occurred on February 3rd. So yeah, this is looking like 2-3 weeks ago. On Saturday, Trump shared on Truth Social, yeah, great people of Ohio, he's going to go visit, basically. Yeah. So the highly toxic chemicals were burned to the air. By now, most of you guys probably know this. So the train derailed. Norfolk Southern, the guys operating the train that kind of derailed, they wound up burning off the chemicals in an attempt to keep it from getting worse. I guess the fear is that if those chemicals leak into the groundwater, they're going to make the groundwater toxic. So they have to burn it, send it up the atmosphere, which creates hydrochloric acid in a nutshell. Because if you take vinyl chloride, let's pull up the chemical form of vinyl chloride. So maybe for those of you who don't know much about chemistry, you might be able to understand what I'm talking about. Now, I use PubChem for a lot of my research on various chemicals to kind of understand what they are. Now, let's look at PubChem. So we got some images of vinyl chloride. Let's go with this one right here. So let's make it bigger. All right. Oh, this one's better. Here we go. All right. So this green one right here, that's the chlorine, as we can see in both of these images. Carbon, carbon, they're double bonded. Hydrogens around them. So what happens is when you expose this to heat, aka burning it, what happens is these carbon atoms split off to form carbon dioxide, right? The hydrogen atoms, they form off and they bond with oxygen to form water. Now the chlorine atom is what's left over. So the chlorine atom will bond with water vapor that's naturally in the air. So water is H2O. Most of us probably know this. If you didn't, now you do. Anyhow, chlorine robs a hydrogen from H2O, making it OH. And the result is you have hydrochloric acid, HCl. Hydrochloric acid is one of the most acidic things out there, really. When you look at the pH scale, it's like, I don't know, what is it, like a 3 or something? So basically what that means is it's really freaking acidic. So what does that mean? So you have the HCl that's in the atmosphere. It's going to come down as rain. You get basically an acidic rain, or for layman's terms, acid rain. That's going to wind up killing plants, fish, animals. It's going to cause property damage to structures. Yeah, nasty, nasty stuff. Your rain is being turned acidic by burning this stuff. But the fear then again is if you had let this vinyl chloride seep into the ground, things would be worse, which maybe they could have been, I don't know, but bottom line is a disaster occurred. I think federal intervention is necessary. I mean, in a lot of instances when the federal government opens its checkbook to start handing out money, I take issue. In this case, though, I'm like, we should probably get some disaster relief for these people. Which one of these Newsweek articles? Oh yeah, Ohio toxic spill risks contaminating local water supplies for 5 million people. Not great, All right, let's go back to it. Yeah, Trump's visiting. What really boggles my mind is why the Biden administration chose to deny FEMA aid to Ohio after the spill. Like, this seems like the kind of thing where I would be giving aid pretty much instantly to help people get over whatever the problem is. But according to FEMA, they're telling the governor that Ohio is not eligible for assistance at this time, whatever that means. I'm not sure how you could determine they're not eligible for assistance, considering that this thing's going to, as Newsweek said, contaminate water for 5 million people. I mean, it sounds like a problem to me. Let's move along. But after Trump said he was going to visit Ohio, then FEMA comes back and says, "Oh wait, we'll actually give you some assistance." So that's stupid. But here's the thing, though. I've been looking into this assistance FEMA's promising. They're just sending a team or a crew or sending people to help. They're not sending any funds or money, and that's why I really don't get like, people are necessary. You got to coordinate the disaster response somehow between various states, right? That makes sense. What doesn't make sense to me is why you're not sending money for, I don't know, the kind of equipment that you might need to help clean up the spill, or at least compensation to the people who are going to be adversely affected, like the people who live in East Palestine. Let's look at Benny Johnson real quick. Benny Johnson, news. I'm not sure what we got here, but basically the gist of what I want to get at is that Benny Johnson, a right-wing influencer, decided to go out to East Palestine, start handing out checks to a bunch of people, like $1,000 per person or something like that, which is not a lot, but it's nice, you know? And if you're one of the poor people that's stuck in East Palestine, it's more money that you've been given by some random guy than, I don't know, the federal government, the people who should be coordinating, helping to mitigate the effects of this. I mean, it seems like a problem to me. It seems crazy that you wouldn't be offering this kind of relief. But let's look at what Joe Biden has been up to. Joe Biden makes a surprise visit to Kiev on President's Day, promises $500 million in American taxpayer-funded weapons. So yesterday, Joe Biden decided he was going to decided he'd show up in Ukraine. He hasn't been to the actual disaster in his own country, maybe the biggest environmental disaster of the decade, possibly. Instead, he goes over to Ukraine, starts handing out money over there. There are people in America that could use that money. $500 million? That's a hell of a lot of money. Our Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, you know where he is? He's in Turkey. He's giving $100 million aid to people who are, suffering from the earthquakes there. And granted, the earthquakes suck, but the earthquakes are not in the U.S. I have some trouble understanding why it is that these people are getting money, but the American citizens are getting none. American citizens should come first. But, that's not really how the government operates, which is ludicrous to me. Congress is sending a delegation to Taiwan during tense U.S.-China relations because of that balloon stuff and other things. I mean, things have been getting tense ever since that trade disparity occurred decades ago. So, yeah. It's good that we're sending a delegation, but again, I don't exactly see this same level of attention being directed to the state of Ohio. Now, granted, I don't live in Ohio. I don't live downstream of Ohio, thank God. But there are people who are American citizens who could probably use some help right now. But going back to our article, yeah, Joe Biden may have handed Donald Trump a huge win with the Ohio response. You betcha. I don't see how it is possible for anyone to conclude that Donald Trump isn't going to somehow benefit from this. Whether you love or hate Trump, and I'm not the guy's biggest fan, I did vote for the guy, but I'm not his biggest fan, Here he is, showing up to Ohio. That helped politically pressure the Biden administration to send FEMA aid. It's ridiculous. You want to know which way Ohio is going to go in the next election? It ain't going to go for Joe Biden. It's going to go for Trump. Maybe Pennsylvania too. Look at all the surrounding states of Ohio. Let's go to 2020 election results. We'll do that. Let's look. Can we find images maybe? Maps. There we go. 2020 election. So we can see the states that Biden won versus Trump won. And looking out here, Ohio, 18 electoral college votes for Trump. Probably going to stay that way. A lot of the states downstream also red states, so they're not exactly budging. But when you look around, we got Pennsylvania that's right next to where East Palestine is. You got Michigan up here. That toxic spill blows around the wrong directions and people around there experience adverse effects. I mean, those are battleground states, essentially. Trump could win them. And Trump has at least secured himself in Ohio. That's a battleground state. Kentucky and West Virginia, not really. They're not really moving. But other states are going to look around and, well, people in other states are going to look around and be like, hey, what the hell's going on here? Crazy. Oh, here's a nice little article blasting Pete Buttigieg, Jackman. These guys are total socialists. I don't really like socialism as an economic or social concept, but, even they're upset by the way the government is handling this. Pete Buttigieg is pretending he's powerless to change railroad safety procedures. Yeah, he is. All he did, to my knowledge, is he sent out a tweet storm basically saying Trump's at fault for this because he rolled back some regulations. Well, until there's an investigation specifically pointing out which regulations should have been which regulations Trump rolled back that led to this disaster, I'm not really sure how you can blame Trump. And hand it under your watch if you had a problem with this. I mean, you've been in charge since Biden got into office, like 2 years now. You could have at least changed it then. You could have at least changed it after the whole thing happened, but so far no regulations have changed. So this guy, or Pete Buttigieg, he's full of shit. That's my general interpretation of the situation. This guy is not being honest when he says that. I don't see how you could think he is. Yeah, Buttigieg blames Trump for Ohio train derailment. We're constrained by law on some areas of rail regulation, like the braking rule withdrawn by the Trump administration in 2018 because of a law passed by Congress in 2015, but we are using the powers we do have to keep people safe. Bullshit. You make the regulations. I mean, I don't know. Until I see an investigation, so it's this braking rule? Again, you need an investigation into how this train derailed. I haven't really heard much about it, but until then, these people are just pointing the finger and blaming each other. Anyhow, that's about all I have for today. In summary, the federal government is a disaster dealing with American problems, but they're first and foremost when it comes to dealing with, Ukraine's problems or Turkey's problems or Taiwan's problems. I mean, not to say that all these countries should be left high and dry, although in some cases I'm like, we shouldn't be involved. Specifically Ukraine, Turkey too. I don't really want to get involved in giving them aid. It's not our problem. If you could at least say, well, we're giving them $100 million to bribe the government to essentially remain pro-Western, well, that's a separate deal. Corrupt as hell, but, it makes sense. $100 million disaster relief? I don't know, man. I don't really buy it. I mean, sure, it's nice to see that you're giving money to people who probably need it. Maybe you bolster U.S.-Turkey relations. It seems horribly inappropriate to be handing out money when there are clear problems in America that could use some of that money. Not 1 cent so far from the federal government has gone towards that Ohio train derailment. Anyhow, I'll just kind of leave you with that. Yeah, have a good one. Thanks for listening, and consider liking and subscribing if you enjoy what I have to talk about, my opinions, etc. Thanks and bye.